Hello and welcome to Friday Live right here on the Your Strata Property Facebook page. And we're also heading out to you all on LinkedIn. How's your week been, guys? What a week we have had in Strata. Lots and lots going on. We have in New South Wales extended our lockdown for at least, our Premier tells us, at least a further 2 weeks. We have had within the last couple of days a snap lockdown in Victoria. So hey to all our Victorian buddies who are joining us in lockdown. We have had some very, very unique legislation introduced, which mandates the wearing of masks on indoor common property in residential strata buildings in Greater Sydney. We haven't seen that before. That's new. That started on Tuesday. And we have heard about a couple more outbreaks in apartments, one in Bondi, 9 cases across 5 apartments, I last heard. Another in Melbourne, I believe, a recent outbreak in an apartment building. And Bondi in particular, we've seen that building under police guard and security guards stationed out the front. We're going to have a talk about that today, but you will be forgiven, I think, especially if you are in Greater Sydney or you're in Victoria, forgiven for maybe getting to Friday and needing a little Friday happy hour drink. You are most welcome to bring along your lockdown libation, as I have called it in my email today and on our social feeds. We are today going to be talking about this new mask rule. In particular, I'm getting questions about commercial buildings. Does this rule apply in commercial buildings? What about in apartment blocks that are not strata titled? Does the mandatory mask rule apply there? We'll get into that. QR codes. So many of us are using QR codes. Are we using them the right way? We're going to talk about that today. I am hearing about some people being turned away from their homes or the homes of family they are caring for because they haven't been able to use the QR code. We'll talk about that. And of course, to weigh in and perhaps lighten the load for us during this time, I have some special guests. I'm going to be welcoming in very soon Jimmy Thomson and Sue Williams. They are waiting here in our virtual green room, ready to celebrate, commiserate, tick off another week in Strata. Now, if you're coming on in, and there are many of you coming in, it's so great to see you. Feel free to drop me a hello. Let me know what you're up to. Let me know if you have a lockdown libation with you today. I have started broadcasting and I have not closed my door, the door to my office here, and I have a horde about to descend. My little boy will be coming inside. My dog will probably start barking, and my husband is coming home from work. So that's all about to happen. So if you see me duck off very quickly to shut the door, that's what I'm doing. I might have to do that sooner rather than later. But I'm seeing some hellos come on in. Please do let me know if you are here, excited to be hearing from our special guests and learning a little bit more about these rules, these new rules that are regulating our apartment communities. We will have time for questions today. So let me know what your lockdown questions are. Strata specific is good and lockdown specific is good. But if you have other strata questions and we're able to get to them today, I generally do come back and scan through those comments and try to help as many people as I can. Tim Sara is here and he is saying, hi, a happy Friday. How are you, Tim? Good to see you. Michael is here. Hello, Amanda and everyone. Hope you're all safe. You too, Michael. Jen is here saying hello. Hey, Jen. Kevin is having a nice white. Me too, Kevin. Cheers to that. And Gary is here saying hi all as well. Good to see you, Gary. Jared, hi. Look, I am doing well, remembering to put those comments up on the screen. It is so good to see you all. There are many, many more of you I can see tuning on in. So let's talk about masks. The new mask wearing rule, which started in New South Wales on Tuesday this week, the 13th of July, it applies to residential buildings in the Greater Sydney area. I have a link for you, the link to the latest New South Wales public health order. You want to look at the order that is right up the top there. This is the page. You can bookmark this page. This is the page that you should be coming back to regularly to see updates, amendments to the public health order. I am indebted to Carlo Finney, a fellow Strata lawyer, who posted on LinkedIn late-ish last Friday night. He was one of the first to discover that the public health order had been amended on Friday at about 5:30 to introduce this new mask-wearing rule due to commence, that did then commence on Tuesday. So look, some of us nerds, Carlo, that's you, are there scanning the public health orders and picking up those changes and then sharing what is new for our apartment communities so we can be as prepared as possible. So Rochelle, who's helping me out in the background here, has popped the link there. That's where you access the latest public health orders. We must wear masks on indoor common property in residential buildings in Greater Sydney. That is for anyone. Whether you are a resident, a visitor, you are staff, you're a building manager, a caretaker, you're a strata manager for some reason having to be at the building, you are a trade. You need to be wearing masks when you're on indoor common property. Now, does that mean that if somebody is not wearing a mask, then they can be told they cannot enter? Can we make masks a condition of entry? I answered that question on the podcast this week, episode number 271 on the podcast. Don't make that mistake is my short advice. Don't turn people away from their homes if they are not wearing a mask. If someone's not wearing a mask, they're in breach of the public health order, and the police are entitled to enforce the public health order and impose penalties. There is no new power given to building managers, to strata managers, to committee members to be issuing penalties or fines or turning people away from the building. So don't go making masks a condition of entry. If someone's not wearing a mask, ask them to wear a mask. I've heard about that a lot this week. Trades not wearing masks, building managers forgetting that they need to be wearing masks, and residents and committee members reminding those people of these new rules. So only the police can enforce the public health order. I think you can, in New South Wales, make a bylaw that is in line with the law. Here come the hordes descending on me. We'll see if somebody saves me and comes and closes this door. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. All good. I do think you can make a bylaw that is in line with this law. And if your bylaw is reflective of the New South Wales legislation, then it is likely to be valid, even though this is quite an invasive, quite a new, quite a uncomfortable power that we may be giving to our owners' corporations to mandate the wearing of masks by way of bylaw. These are unique situations, and where you have a bylaw that is merely reflecting what the current law is, I think that probably would be a valid bylaw. To answer a question that was coming in for me this week, commercial buildings, does this new law apply to our commercial strata buildings? Short answer is no. The commercial building, the commercial owners corporation itself is not covered by this new health order. However, bear in mind that if you've got a commercial building, you have businesses that are operating inside the commercial building, from the lots inside the commercial building. And yes, indeed, they have requirements to mandate mask wearing inside their premises. So they are covered by those rules about businesses. They must have COVID safe plans. They must have QR codes, and masks must be worn inside those businesses. So the building itself and the common areas in the commercial building itself, not covered. But the minute you're entering one of these businesses, then you should be wearing a mask. Interesting. Seems a little gap there, perhaps. We might see that gap filled in. I do know from my colleagues and friends who are communicating with government regularly that there is a lot of discussion within government at the moment about what new additional rules we might need in our strata buildings, talking about things like QR codes for sure, and we may see some changes come through in the very near future. So I will hope to be able to keep you updated as soon as any changes, any new rules come in. Another question, if you are not a strata title building, if you are a block of apartments, we see this a bit in Sydney's eastern suburbs, a block of apartments, perhaps all owned in one line, all owned by the same person, and it's never been strata titled. Does this apply in those buildings? No, it doesn't. The definitions in the amended public health order refer back to definitions of common property in the Strata Schemes Development Act, also community association property in the Community Land Management Act. So association property is covered by these laws, and also company title is covered by these laws. So unless the apartment building is under one of those titling systems, then no, it's not covered by the mandatory mask wearing rule. So there you go. Lots of you coming in, getting some thumbs up there. Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to just head back to these comments here and say hi to those who are coming in. R&D, hello, how you doing? Charles is here. Good to see you. David is here. I'm seeing a hello from Megan. And we have a comment here from Tim. Some strata communities would love the kind of power given to the police to require behaviours like mask wearing and to issue fines for non-compliance. Yes, I'm hearing a little bit of that too, Tim. No such power, though. Let's be clear about that. Charles has a question about pet walking. I'm going to flag that one and come back to it, Charles. I'm getting an absolutely agree from Joe Cooper. I'm wondering if that's in reply there to you, Tim. Okay. Oh, I'm very interested. I have a comment here from Heather about Melbourne. I've meant to look this up, Heather. Heather's saying we've had mask wearing as compulsory for months. Is that inside your apartment buildings, Heather? Question mark. Issues we have seen a very small number of residents not wearing and abusive when reminded. We've not done anything too hard. Yesterday, a contractor was caught. This has been happening. On this front, we're now reporting any breach, have proactively contacted our contractors to tell them we will inform relevant authorities if any COVID breach is observed. Love it. I wasn't sure. I didn't have time to look too closely about whether you had mandatory mask wearing in Melbourne, Heather. So that is very interesting. If anyone has a link to the relevant legislation there for Victoria, I would love to put my hands on it. Feel free to pop it in the comments here. Lots more highs coming in. Good to see you, Joe, Marita. Heather saying yes. Okay, good. Yes, within the building. Good to know. Alrighty, I do have our special guests. They're here. Don't worry. They are settled in. They are sound checked, video checked, ready to go. Before I head over to welcome them in, I want to say a quick word about QR codes. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago on Friday Live, and it's come up in my inbox and on some other comments on the page since then. I think it's a good idea for our residential strata buildings to have a QR code for those who are visiting, for trades, those who are inevitably having to come into the building. Of course, we're not having parties or anything like that, are we? But for those who are not residents, so we have a record if we need it, that we can trace back who the visitors to the building have been. But this is not mandatory for residential buildings. QR codes are not mandatory for our residential strata buildings in New South Wales. They are, as I said earlier, mandatory for businesses. So you may have some businesses within commercial buildings that have these QR codes. But you can get a QR code from Services New South Wales. I haven't got a link here for you, but I will come back and pop that in. Many of you shared it with me a couple of weeks ago and said that as long as you have an ABN, your owner's corporation has an ABN, you can get a QR code, which you can then use. However, be careful not to tout that QR code as a condition of entry or as the law in a residential strata building. I have heard about that happening within the last few days. I have heard of a building manager turning away a resident because they didn't have their phone with them and they couldn't scan in on the QR code and they weren't able to access their premises. That's not on, guys. Let's not be doing that. If you are a business and it is mandatory for you to have a QR code, you also need to have another means of being able to check people in, a non-electronic means. So that's something to bear in mind. I think we might see a bit of movement in this space from government in coming days. I'm not sure. I'm hearing a little bit about that. If you have facilities that you're still operating, we heard from Jane Hearn 2 weeks ago in her community. They have a gym, a swimming pool. They've chosen to keep those open, as we can do in New South Wales, but they have implemented QR codes and residents are checking in with those QR codes when they use the pool or the gym. So they've got a record there. You're not going to have 100% compliance, that's for sure, but it might mean that down the track, if there is a positive case that's visited your building, it's going to be much easier for New South Wales Health to be able to trace and to contact you to let you know. Okay, so I think QR codes are a good idea, but don't force people, certainly not residents, to be using these QR codes and checking into their own homes. That's not cool. The other thing to not be doing, and building managers are not entitled to do this, is to ask people to prove their residency, to show licenses, to check addresses. That's not your job. Please don't be doing that and don't be refusing people access to their homes if they don't have a mask, haven't checked in on a QR code, or they won't show you their license. That is unhelpful behavior at this time. So just wanted to flag that. I'm hearing about that happening. Questions about that, please do post them there in the comments. I have had a very kind family member who's come and shut my door. So we're all good. We're ready to rock and roll. To welcome in our special guests for today. They are indeed Jimmy Thomson and Sue Williams. Now, Jimmy Thomson runs the apartment living comment, news and advice website, flatchat.com.au. He is the author of 15 published books. He writes a weekly column in the Australian Financial Review. He is a frequent guest on radio and TV and hosts and produces a podcast with Sue Williams. Jimmy has worked as a TV script writer in Australia and Los Angeles, having created 3 successful TV drama series. He holds an MA in writing from Swinburne University, and his great passions are American politics, Vietnam, and Glasgow Celtic Football Club. Celtic, did I say? I mucked this up last time. Sue Williams is a best-selling author, an award-winning journalist and travel writer working in newspapers, magazines and TV in Australia, the UK and New Zealand. Born in England, but settling in Australia in 1989, Sue also lectures on writing at Boston University's Sydney campus and writes about property, often strata, for Domain with the Sydney Morning Herald, Melbourne Age and the Australian Financial Review. Sue is also the other half of the Flat Chat podcast with Jimmy. Now, after 25 non-fiction books, from biography and true crime to travel, Sue's first historical novel, Elizabeth and Elizabeth, about a friendship between governor's wife Elizabeth Macquarie and wool pioneer Elizabeth MacArthur in early colonial Australia, was published in 2021 to great acclaim. Now, together, Jimmy and Sue were 2 of the first to publicise the realities of apartment living to a mainstream audience, with the aim of making residents more aware of their rights and responsibilities, not to mention compromises and concessions that we all have to make if we want to live happily within a community. And boy, aren't we making a lot of compromises and concessions right now? Please welcome in Jimmy Thomson and Sue Williams.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me here on this Friday, coming through loud and clear. And the football jerseys are in the background. Did I say it wrong again, Jimmy?
Yeah, no, you said it right.
Oh, I
It's
said it
Celtic.
right this
You
time.
said it right. It's a singular Celtic.
Singular
Celtics
self.
with an S is the Boston basketball team.
Oh, okay. Because I want to say Celtic, like a normal person.
Well, that's another thing.
That's just wrong.
That's a culture. I could go on. I could go on at length about how Celtic culture became known as Celtic culture because the original sociologists were German way back when. Yeah. So.
Okay. Another topic for another podcast, another day.
Yes.
Oh, please no.
No. Now, I have to start by saying I'm very pleased that neither of you are in your pajamas. And I say that because I did see Sue's pajamas recently splashed over the Sydney Morning Herald, I think it was. You were both locked down. You were in isolation a few weeks ago, having visited, I think, the wrong cafe. Sue, tell me about that.
Yep, we'd just gone to visit a cafe where unfortunately there was a positive case documented. So we immediately went into a 2-week isolation period. And during that period, we were kind of saying, oh, isn't this interesting being in an apartment building during isolation? Because I think sometimes, I mean, isolation is always really hard. But if you're in a good apartment building, it can be a lot more pleasant than if you're in a bad apartment building or in a house. Because at least you have a community around you who can hopefully help you out with a lot of things. So we were saying, oh, this is really interesting. And Jimmy was writing a column about, for his AFR column, about isolation. I think his editor said to him she was really interested that we were isolated. And so Jimmy just came round to my office and said, let's take a picture of ourselves. And I didn't actually even really kind of consider the fact that I was wearing my pajamas until I opened the national newspaper, the Fin Review, and saw a picture of myself there in all my glory. So thank you so much for that, Jimmy. And lots of people commented on it. And one person said, you look like a pair of old crazies, which I thought was really quite apt, really. Yeah, it was quite correct. So, so that's how you saw us in my pajamas. Jimmy had the foresight to get dressed before he took the picture. Of course he had.
Oh, yeah. That's called a setup, Sue.
It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, give me a break.
Well, so, I mean, I think a lot of people in isolation probably still in their pajamas now, and it's like 4:30. So yeah.
You actually the other night Sue did a podcast for a library connected with one of her books, and she was only dressed for day dress from the waist up, you know. And I thought, if you have trouble with your equipment, you can fix it yourself. Because
I have heard stories about that actually, but yes, I that's quite common for me as well to be half dressed. Do you feel that as authors, as writers, journalists, podcasters, also now being home, working, just having your screen is kind of normal, and being in lockdown, set aside isolation, which is a bit different, it's business as usual on your side?
It's probably more business. I mean, apart from getting plenty of stories and from the website, the Flat Chat website point of view, it's there's lots and lots of stuff, lots of material coming in. There's also the fact that we've been freelancing for almost 20 years now, Sue, something like that.
Yeah.
We're all set up. We were all ready to go before everybody else's lives started falling apart. So, you know, it's kind of like just the only thing that's different for us is we're probably working harder while everybody else is sadly not being able to work at all. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And we kind of feel, oh God, a little bit guilty about that, but the show must go on.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing that from the Strata lawyers. One of my colleagues, we were playing phone tag for about 4 days, and we each agreed that we're just so busy because of the additional work created by everybody being home at the same time in their apartments.
All that stuff.
I think we both really, sorry, Jimmy. I think we both really enjoy working from home, but one of the great benefits is kind of going out to a cafe, going out for lunch, going and having coffee, because you know, it can get a little bit lonely sometimes, and we kind of really miss that. But I think when we're not in isolation, when we're just in lockdown, we kind of very careful always to go out and buy takeaway coffee and buy lunch and things, just to try and keep the businesses around us moving, because while we're really busy, we'd like to be able to spread that among the people around us as well.
Yep. Jimmy wants to jump in. I can see the eyebrows.
Well, one of the one of the things that you said earlier about masks in Melbourne, before I forget, I know it's slightly off topic, but it's in the public health order. People in Melbourne are being told to carry masks at all times.
Okay.
We don't have that. I mean, they come from a different angle, and their public health order there is masks must be worn inside, with the exception of your home. And of course, that brings us back to our debate, which is, well, is that my apartment or is it my apartment building? But basically they say, well, you're inside, you wear a mask, and if you're outside, you've got to have a mask in your pocket. Which I think is a
really good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
I've been saying for a while that I think they've done a better job with their drafting than we have. We've got a little bit confused by this definition that's been there since last year, place of residence. And place of residence has been given a very broad definition, which completely ignores strata title properties. The definition includes passageways, stairways, walkways, entrances, and exits to your place of residence, to which we in Strata go, yeah, well, that's all the common property. So it has caused confusion. It has meant that there is this grey area in our with our health orders when it comes to our strata properties. And the most clarity that we've ever had since March last year came last Friday night when we had this very clear directive. I found it quite clear for the mandatory mask wearing in indoor common property. Finally, we have that term in our health orders, common property in our residential strata buildings. So I'm very interested to see where that leads. What are you, Jimmy, you said you're hearing lots of stories are coming through your website. You're also living in Strata at the moment. How has the mask wearing rule gone down this week, so far as you've heard?
Funnily enough, I think the mask wearing controversy, if we can call it that, basically, there are people who were already going to wear masks anyway in some buildings. I mean, our building still has the advisory notice in the lift. Remember last week before that we were ordered to wear masks? There was a brief period where the government just advised us to wear masks. So our building still in the lifts, it says you're strongly advised. It's the official poster, but not the most recent one. But the thing is that nobody is ignoring that poster anyway. You just don't see people in our building not wearing masks. Now, we know that somewhere out there are people who are anti-mask and anti-vaxxers. And somewhere out there are people who do need to be told, wear a mask on common property. But generally speaking, I think the people that we encounter and people who write to us and talk to us, with one or two exceptions, are saying, yeah, look, it's perfect, it makes perfect sense, just do it. Yep. It's the big anxiety is walking out your front door and going, oh, I forgot the mask again, and running back in. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on electricity bills in apartment buildings for all the people who got on the lift, pressed the button, and then went, oh no.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of quibbling about mask wearing. Is it legal to say that you have to wear a mask to enter the building? I just think we know the spirit of the notices is very much we should wear a mask, and it makes sense to wear a mask, especially with the Delta variant. I mean, the virus is so infectious. It's really easy just to catch it in the lift with another person. So everybody really must wear a mask. And sometimes I think it's not all that helpful to kind of start saying, is it legal or isn't it? And I can understand that. You're a lawyer. Lawyers do that kind of stuff, with all respect. But I just think sometimes...
I'm going to leave now.
Just say, do it.
I think it's very important that at times like these, lawyers are on top of what the law is, what it means, and what it's supposed to mean, and how it's being implemented in practice. Because at the end of the day, these are incredibly unique times, very, very personally invasive laws. And I don't think I've heard a lawyer yet who said that we don't need them, but it is very important that we keep an eye on them. And lawyers have done that for centuries. That's been our role. And what I appreciate that I hear probably the top 2% of worst cases and worst situations that are happening in our strata buildings. But I do hear about building managers, about committee members who are abusing these rules to operate the common property in a way that, for whatever reason, makes them feel like they're in control. There are other agendas perhaps that might be going on in a community, and then to have a sign that makes mask wearing a condition of entry, which is not a legal sign, putting that up then weighs into a debate about something else, about what residents should and shouldn't be doing. We have buildings with more than 100 people living in them. There is a lot going on behind the scenes. And I think it's important that we're clear that people should be absolutely applying common sense, absolutely walking into a building with masks on, but not trying to leverage these rules to suit some kind of personal agenda. And that if they are, then they're called out on it for the good of everybody. And I agree absolutely that it is the smallest percent of buildings that would fall into that category. But they're out there, and you will see, no doubt, comments on this page from people who are unfortunately living in and having to experience those buildings. So I do see it as my role to be very clear about what the laws are, certainly also what they aren't, and then to overlay that with a message of common sense, which I hope is usually there.
Sure.
I think this feeds back to what you were saying about the police outside the apartment block. Because
let's talk about that.
part of the reason that we're in the position we're in, both here and in Melbourne, is because we weren't taking it seriously, or not enough people were taking it seriously. And I think signs, and I'm talking about verbal signs as well as events like police turning up at an apartment block. What the sign says literally makes a difference, obviously, but also the fact that the sign is there and saying something is important. And with the police, they probably didn't need all those police there, but they certainly got everybody's attention, and people are saying, wow, this is a big deal. The police are swarming into this around this building. And we saw this with the Kings Park building in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago when they went into lockdown, and there were all these people in protective clothing, and they were swabbing people as they came in and out and whatever. And again, that was serving a function, but it was also, I think, sending out a signal to people, this is a big deal.
And isn't it great that they're actually taking apartment buildings really seriously? Because there have been a couple of buildings in Sydney that have been locked down where we are. And I think Karen Stiles, the Owners Corporation Network administrator, the executive officer, said, well, when you have a building locked down, how comes you're then saying to everybody who's living there, now go out and get tested and then come back again? So they're all getting into the lifts together, they're all going out together, they're passing through the lobby together. Why not bring all the health professionals in, knock on people's doors and test them there and then? And that made perfect sense to me as well. So the fact that the government is actually taking more notice of apartment buildings, I think is a great thing, and taking our health more seriously, because, you know, obviously people in houses are a little bit more isolated from people in apartment buildings. So if we've got 100, 120 people in an apartment building, surely we deserve some special attention, really.
Yep, I agree with you for sure. And I think the key here is that we do keep talking about this, we keep asking these questions. So when we see police swarming around an apartment block, we notice that and we think, okay, is this something that is needed? are apartments really that different to houses? I think the answer is yes, and we've been saying that for a long time, trying to call attention to our unique needs. And so it might be that that type of intervention is measured and necessary. What we have to be concerned about, I think, is not to fall into a place where we just accept that these rules are right, that the steps are right, and that the intervention is necessary. To step back and debate about it and think, you know what, they are different to workplaces, they are different to residential buildings, they are different to shopping centres. Yes, I think we do need this kind of presence. That is an important exercise that we continue to do. So
Amanda,
thank you for that.
Sorry, do you think there's a disconnect between fair trading and the health department? Shouldn't fair trading have been going to health and saying, oh, by the way, we have to look after all these, is it 1 million people in New South Wales, Sue, that now live in apartments?
Sure.
And fair trading is the government body that's supposed to be looking after us.
Yep,
I get the feeling
absolutely.
that they either weren't making the call, or New South Wales Health were saying, no, go off and fix your broken toys, and play with your broken toys. We'll deal with the health issues.
Yeah, and the problem then is I went to the Fair Trading COVID in Apartments webpage yesterday, and it hadn't been updated since about March, I think. So it did not have, and this was 3 days into a new health order, did not have anything about mandatory mask wearing, did not have any links to New South Wales Health for the posters. The New South Wales Health website's been great, and that's where I've been directing everybody. But you go to Fair Trading, and yes, this is supposed to be the regulator for our apartments, completely out of date. And to answer your question, Jimmy, I think, yes, completely disconnected from what's going on. I mean, the Owners Corporation Network has for quite some time been calling for a Strata commissioner, and you can really see where that person's role would be front and center right now, to be that single source of truth, to use Karen Stiles' words, a place where we're getting the right information from that one location, a place to go. Somebody asked me the other day, is there a website that the building managers go to find out all this Strata information? And I said, no, aside from New South Wales Health and looking at the public health order, there isn't, and that's a problem.
It is, especially, I mean, in our building, when we were in isolation, it was fine for us because we live in a good building. We have a 24-hour concierge service. We have a building manager on site, so it actually makes it quite easy. They've adapted a system to, our rubbish obviously might be infected if we're a positive case, so we leave it outside the door. They come and pick it up and separate it from the rest of the rubbish. They deliver stuff to our door, so nobody actually comes to our door as well. And we have the rule of no chit chat with the concierge, which was quite funny, really. But for our building, it was great to be in isolation. But for other people's buildings where they don't have concierge, where they don't have building manager, what do? They have people delivering food, hopefully groceries. But those people, they have to accept the groceries. Maybe it's hard for them to get into the building. There's lots of little issues that maybe aren't being dealt with. And so the Department of Fair Trading should really be offering guidance to people about how to cope with these situations in those buildings which are not as kind of as well advanced and as sophisticated and as big as some of the big city buildings. And they're really not stepping up.
Yes, well, we have Jane Hearn, who is tuning in here. She was my guest for Friday Live 2 weeks ago. And if anybody wants to check out that interview, it's here further down on the page. Jane has made some comments. I will just try and find here. The problem inside Department of Health is they are being lobbied not to interfere and have mistakenly believed we can just pass bylaws to deal with our residential communities. They hopefully now understand that in a public health emergency, it requires the use of extraordinary executive powers. Thousands of schemes cannot meet, and it's not appropriate anyway. It's not a credible public health response. So Jane is the spokesperson for the Owners Corporation Network in relation to COVID and also short-term letting, and is always a font of information and knowledge. Thank you for that, Jane.
I wonder if, when Jane's saying that hopefully they will now understand that, apartments are different. I think that's a very high hope because, we've been talking and writing about apartments for nearly 20 years now, and the perception in government. I mean, when we first raised the issue with the Department of Health about wearing masks in common areas, and I wrote to the Department of Health and said, why don't we have the same rules as you have for offices? Because we are different from houses. And the response was, oh, we don't treat people differently. We don't, and it was like, we don't discriminate against people in apartments. And tried to say to them, actually, we'd quite like you to discriminate in favor of people in apartments. But
protect.
That mindset, the quarter-acre block mindset has not shifted much in 20 years.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that the hopefully for Jane, Jane is saying, we've seen these outbreaks now that we talked about in March last year, we were fearful of, and now we're seeing them in apartment buildings. And it's in some ways unfortunate that it's taken that to have these interventions. But in another way, at least now, we have the attention and the interventions, and we're talking about it.
Sure.
One of the questions I got on the, sorry, Sue, I keep jumping in on top of you. One of the questions I got on the website.
He's going to do it anyway.
You had your half-second chance to jump in there, and you didn't.
I have more nerves, Jimmy.
One of the questions that somebody sent to the website, to Flat Chat Forum, was the apartment building in Bondi. How did it spread? Were most of the apartments on one floor, or were they on different floors? And I wasn't able to ascertain that at all. It would be quite interesting, because when you look at some of the, I think it was Jane Hearn who pointed out that or a medical expert in Melbourne pointed out that in the quarantine hotels, one of the ways the virus was transmitted was 2 hotel doors opening at the same time, 2 room doors opening, and the air just passing through. And as I think it was Jane said, well, that's every chance that's going to happen in an apartment block. You're going to open your door at the same time as your neighbor, and there you are. Even if you're trying not to confront other people and walk through their air, it's inevitable.
Mm.
Maybe we should wear masks all the time. No, I'm not seriously suggesting. We have a little mask on our front door, just tied around the front door handle.
Yeah, good plan. Yeah.
Mm.
Just
Sue, now's your chance.
Sometimes, thank you. Sometimes I think, we focus on the bad things about lockdown, and obviously it's awful, and it's really terrible for the people who are losing their jobs and really struggling to survive. And we've got friends who are having a really, really hard time. But in some apartment buildings, it has kind of created much more of a sense of community, and that's been great. And we saw that during the first lockdown, and it would be wonderful to see that flourish again this time, I think. There was a building in Potts Point that was in lockdown, and somebody went round and left a bar of chocolate outside everybody's apartment door. And people were putting on Facebook, that was such a wonderful gesture, because it really cheered them up. And things like that, just really nice little random acts of kindness. And when we were in isolation, a friend dropped off a big box of biscuits and fruit and cheese for us. And I can't tell you how excited we were to see that. We were both feeling a bit down, and then there was a knock on our door, and we opened the door, and the concierge was running away so he didn't breathe our air. But there was this big box of all these goodies, and it was just absolutely wonderful. And I mean, I think both of us had tears in our eyes to see it, and we probably put on about 10 kilos each from eating all the stuff. But it was wonderful, wonderful little gestures like that. Another friend dropped us off coffee every other day. It was just lovely. And hopefully in some buildings, people are doing that kind of thing. We had, during the first lockdown, lots of people did shopping and offered to help other people. Others said, this is my phone number. If you get a bit lonely, just give us a call and have a chat, and anytime. And stuff like that is just wonderful. And it just really brings a lot of humanity into apartment buildings again. And that's what community and apartment living should all be about, I think.
Yep, definitely.
Kind of counterintuitive that something that's telling us to stay apart is actually bringing us together in a way.
Well, yeah, that's a nice thing. It's bringing us emotionally together, even though we're physically apart, I suppose. Yeah.
You got me worried about the chocolate bars. I mean, I'm hoping that they sanitized every wrapper before they just. It would be terrible to find out the whole building had gone down with the virus due to chocolate deliveries.
Jimmy, you are so cynical. Oh my gosh. Those wonderful gestures, and now you're polluting it.
I'm just jumping into the comments here because we've got quite a few that have been coming through. Kevin said, my local cafe is delivering my daily coffee each day. Nice one.
Fantastic.
I like that. A few more hellos coming in. Sean saying hi. Pamela is saying hi. Kevin is saying hi. I did see Heather, who I understand I think is in Melbourne, has said we need to know about Bondi. It's happening here too with the apartment block that's been locked down. So that's to your comment, Jimmy, about how the virus transmitted across 5 different apartments in Bondi, and this question about airborne transmission, ventilation in our apartment buildings. I've also heard Jane speak on that. That will be very important to get to the bottom of.
Some of the older apartment buildings have connected airflow. Oh, I don't know if it's air conditioning, but I mean, I remember writing stories about people getting the smoke from 3 apartments away because it was all connected. And you wouldn't be able to build an apartment like that now, not legally. But
No.
I wonder if there are people still out there, you know, just whether they want to or not, breathing air from other apartments.
Yeah. Tell me this, what do you think about QR codes for residential apartment buildings? Are you hearing about any of that in your with your followers, Jimmy, or something that you would support if maybe it was mandated by the government?
I don't. Well, look, our building, we get in and out of common area and the gyms and things using a fob. The lift has an electronic fob, so pretty much the government, I almost said, the committee, the managers know where we've been anyway, but not all buildings have that. I do think there's an issue with some. A very good example. The reason we found out about our cafe that we had visited was not through the QR code, even though we'd used the QR code. Sue had checked in with the QR code, but then discovered she hadn't checked out from the previous, previously. And when she went back to check out of that, it cancelled, as it turned out, the check-in. So we didn't know until we were reading the newspaper going, ooh, that. In fact, it was a friend who sat down, had a coffee with us, said, you realize we were in that cafe at that time. Now, so the QR codes are not infallible by any stretch of the imagination. I think a lot of people have trouble with them. A lot of people don't have, believe it or not, they don't have those smartphones, especially older people. And some people's smartphones aren't that smart. It's just, like you say, there's got to be another, if you're going to use QR codes, there's got to be another system you can use for checking in somehow.
And not everyone has a concierge sitting there able to hand over the form to check in manually.
Sure.
I mean, it would be fair enough to have kind of like a visitor's book, I guess. But then
if you had somebody there to monitor it.
Well, that's the thing, because people will, it seems to be part of human nature. If you don't actually have somebody standing there saying, oi, check in, then you'll think, oh, it's, you know, I'm in a rush. Funnily enough, thinking about the, you know, you can't come into the building unless you're wearing a mask, and, you know, people turning up and going, oh God, I've got to go down to the local shop and buy a mask. Maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's a weather thing, or a combination of the two, but I tend to find when I arrive back in the building, I reckon I've got, you know, 5 minutes to get into the flat and get to the bathroom, because we can tend to psychologically time ourselves, our physical needs, get in the door and get done. And if you're being sent away this could be a disaster.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially when you've had a couple of drinks in the afternoon.
Yes. Where? In the park?
On a Friday afternoon podcast.
That's it. Exactly. Lots of questions coming in about, or comments coming in about QR codes. Zlata's saying most people read the QR code as stating check in, but clearly not check out. I certainly had a policy of always checking in, but never checking out until my mum very recently got done in a supermarket. She went to the wrong supermarket at the wrong time, and all of a sudden she was in isolation. And only because she checked in, checked out, they knew the window that she was there. And it occurred to me, that's a good reason to check out. So New South Wales Health knows when you left so that you weren't exposed. Otherwise, you're potentially there all day and into isolation you go. So check out, everybody.
Yeah.
But our whatever software we use, it does say once you've checked in, don't forget to check out.
Yeah.
It says at the bottom, but then, it's so hard. I mean, remember we were going to have this system where your phone would tell you when you were near another phone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, my niece in Scotland, they have that in Scotland, and my niece was at work and she put her phone on a desk and went away to do something, and then somebody came in and put his phone near her phone in the desk, and because the two phones connected, she was ordered to go home and self-isolate for 2 weeks, I think. She hadn't even been anywhere near this person. It's just the two phones were talking to each other.
Yes, I think that was the Australian government's failed app last year.
It was a good failure, I think.
But technology exists that when you walk past a shop, sometimes on your phone you receive messages from that shop saying, we've got a sale and things. And we've got this really sophisticated technology. When we go into a place, okay, fine, we sign in. But when we come out, couldn't it just automatically kind of cancel that for us? I mean, that technology obviously exists because it's used elsewhere. Why can the government not use that technology? It would make it a lot easier for a lot of people.
Easier just to send them all into isolation for being at the cafe all day, I suppose. They think about it. Heather is saying QR codes at least speed up the tracing effort. Sure. Yes, not everybody's going to use them, but maybe the right person will. And other comments here. Elizabeth Huesler is here saying hi. I saw your comment earlier, Elizabeth. This is fantastic. What a power trio. I like that. Screenshot that one.
Thank you. Who's on lead guitar? That's what we need to know.
That's interesting. It's one of those comments from Kevin who says he gets a message if he doesn't check out. That's fantastic. I've never received a message like that.
Yes. And Kevin, I'm not sure where you are or what app you have, but please do let us know. That's good to know. And of course, then we've got the other extreme. Gosh, you're coming in so fast, these comments. They're jumping around. Jenny is in WA saying the WA app doesn't have a checkout option. Okay.
Wow.
The Hotel California, you can check out, but you never leave.
Yeah,
exactly. Question here from Rick. Rick is saying, hello, we owners in New South Wales have a concern that estate agents are still showing prospects through unsold properties. They refuse to scan in. We have no means of knowing whether the potential buyer has been to a hotspot or not. Rick, there are rules about that, quite strict rules, and the Real Estate Institute, New South Wales, will be a great place to go and check what those rules are. I might have a look myself later and come back and give you some links below this comment, but absolutely open for inspections. My understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but open for inspections can still happen, but we have limited numbers and we have the need definitely to check in. And I think it is a reasonable excuse under our health orders to leave your home if you are looking for another place of residence, last time I checked. But that there is no QR code is a concern. Rick, the agent should have a QR code at the property and be checking everybody in. And if that was happening in my building and I was seeing people come and go, yes, I'd be concerned about that too.
But I mean, even before this happened, real estate agents showing properties always had to take people's names and their phone numbers, so they would kind of know that they were going to be there. But so hopefully they're still doing that, even if they don't have the QR code. So maybe that's a good thing anyway.
We did have that case the other week of the real estate agent still selling apartments that had defect repair orders on them and not telling the potential purchasers that those orders were on them, which they're legally obliged to do apparently. But the real estate agent's response was, "Well, nobody told us. Nobody told." And
I also read the response from the developer that said, "Well, nobody asked, and if they don't ask, why do I have to tell them about defects? No one asked if we had defects."
Yes.
It's awful, isn't it?
I would hate for my personal health to be in the hands of people who cannot read newspapers.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Kevin has come back to let us know that he is in Redfern. He's using Services New South Wales, the one that we all have to use. So that's sending you a message, Kevin, if you're not checked out. Hasn't happened to me yet.
No.
Yeah.
I get it.
Oh, here we go. Michelle to the rescue. Michelle is telling us in the settings, you can set it to get checkout reminders.
Wow.
Who knew this?
There
we go.
Great.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That's awesome.
I remember looking at it and thinking, nah.
That's me. That was me. I'd say I have friends who say, I haven't checked out. I said, oh, don't worry about checking out. You don't have to check out. Oh, you just check into the next place. It's all good. No, you should check out because you don't want to New South Wales Health to think you've been exposed when you haven't. So, okay. Charles is also giving us some instructions there. Excellent. Love it.
Okay. What happens if you have checked in and you've been in an infected area zone or near a person? Do you get a phone call? I mean, I really genuinely, I don't know. Do you get a phone call from New South Wales Health?
Yes.
And do they send somebody around or do they just tell you?
Not, I haven't heard of them sending somebody around, but definitely getting a phone call, yes, and being given the isolation instructions. What you need to isolate the 14 days in your room. If you've got other family members, no contact, wear a mask, have your food delivered to your door. When they rang my mum, who went through this process, and said, "Well, your husband will have to make your dinner and bring it to the door for you," and she said, "That's not going to be possible. I will be very hungry. My husband doesn't do that." So they made it through. But yeah, phone call and checks. Yeah, New South Wales Health rings and checks that you're doing all the right things. So good people.
Isn't it lucky that Uber Eats at this difficult time in the city?
Absolutely. And Uber Eats also deliver groceries, and they do it within 3 hours. Because I remember when a building near us was locked down, they had real trouble because Coles suddenly was overwhelmed with orders and was saying it's going to take us 2 days to get your groceries to you. But if you go to Uber Eats, you can get it done much more quickly. I imagine it's a little bit more expensive. I don't know, but the convenience would be really worth it for a lot of people too.
Yes, and thank you. Those Uber drivers, another front line here, and our building managers. I just keep thinking about those building managers, the concierges who are there at our buildings and trying to keep on top of all of these rules, do the best for their communities. I see emails that go out all the time from building managers updating everybody, getting the right posters up, making sure that everybody is as least uncomfortable as they can be. They really are the heroes, I think, this time around. Now our time is just about up. It flies every time we do this. Was there anything, Jimmy or Sue, that you wanted to add before we wrap up and continue to enjoy our Fridays as best we can?
Just to wish everyone a happy weekend and keep safe and don't get too down, because this is going to be over soon. And hopefully this might be the last big lockdown we ever have. And please go and get vaccinated.
Yes, good message.
And Jimmy brings, it's got nothing to do with me. I am not responsible for your excess intake of alcohol, just to be clear.
Good. Important that we clarified that, Jimmy. Now, I'm just saying, finally, before we sign off, Wal Dobro has been tuning in and I know has posted some helpful comments and links here. Wal has said the New South Wales government has just issued a Strata toolkit a few
Wow.
minutes ago. He's got it as a PowerPoint presentation. I know that Wal sits on a stakeholder group and is one of those ears with government that I was talking about earlier. So I'm not sure if that's yet a public release, Wal, but I'm sure we will find out. I will be having a look into that as soon as I sign off. But yes, I had a feeling it wouldn't be long before we had a little bit more coming through from government. So that's exciting. Stay tuned.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining me for Friday Live, Jimmy Thomson and Sue Williams. Stay safe. You can get back into the same room now if you want to, or keep enjoying your separate Friday afternoon.
I just spent the afternoon sprinting up and down connecting Sue's new camera, so and then realized that I hadn't fixed my own. So it's been
Sue looks great. Sue looks great.
Always.
Thank you, everybody. I will head around and check out all of those comments later on this evening. Look after yourselves, and we'll catch you all next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.